it's a little easier. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I remember next time to kind of.
that's
Last
all
time we
good.
did it on Zoom, so it was a little different. But
Yeah, yeah, learning process. It's all good.
here we go. Okay, cool, cool. It said it's supposed to do your transcript for you. Boom. Okay. All right, folks. Welcome to our second author interview with Brent, and we're going to be talking about unnecessary chaos. I just realized this is like during the Super Bowl.
It's all good because like
I
I
I literally, when I tell you football is like the last thing in my mind,
I'm a,
like
yeah, I'm a gay. I'm not worried about this straight summit. Like that's what
I
that's
was
what I'm
just
thinking
like,
about. Like I'm like this is like the straight summit. I'm fine not being
I was
fully
just,
present for
I
it.
was at my fingers crossed. I mean, I was like, you didn't say anything, so I was just like, okay,
No,
we can
no,
do
look, trust
this.
me. I was
Yeah,
like, I'm totally cool. I'm gonna hang out with some friends afterwards, but like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just a hangout. It's
It should
zero
still be
point
on
of
afterwards. I don't think it's that
yeah.
short.
I didn't
I
even
haven't
know
watched
who
the
was
game in a very long
playing
time, so
until
I'm.
like yeah, no, it's fine. Trust me, this scheduling is perfect. I'm not worried about that game.
Cool, cool, cool. Sorry, I'm gonna just check and make sure nobody else added their email. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Hey, great. My name is Christian Ivy. Also AG Dub on socials. I do the art direction and social media for Violet Mag, and also guest edited issue number 28 themed on belonging. And I'm gonna be talking with Brent today about again unnecessary chaos and a little about writing, editing, and some Black queer stuff. And yeah, we'll see what we get in the next hour, and then we'll open it up after that for Q&A. So if you got any questions about the text specifically or to Brent, save it to the end. All right, cool. So I'm gonna send it up to Brent so they can do a little interview. Or not interview. Oh, sorry,
Intro,
introduction.
intro.
Intro about who they are and what they bring into the table.
Yeah. So I know this is gonna be recorded for later, so I'm just gonna pretend I'm talking to a future audience along with my present audience. But my name is Brent C. Lambert. I was a founding member of Fire Literary Magazine. I started off doing their social media for a while. Was part of the Hugo winning team when we won that year, which was pretty awesome. After that, I also do freelance editing for Tour.com. I helped bring The Mimicking of Known Successes by Michael Older to life. That was my first book that I sold with Tour.com. And the sequel is coming out Tuesday, In Position of Unnecessary Obstacles, which is cool. Yeah, Malcolm's an amazing writer, so check her out. I also, as you all know, I had the novella through Neon Hemlock, Necessary Chaos. I also was part of an all-black horror anthology called All These Sunken Souls, which came out last year. And I am also going to be a part of this anthology of queer pulp science fiction and fantasy called I Want That Twink Obliterated. I that honestly, I don't know how I will ever top that title in my life. Like that is by far the best title I have ever been a part of. So yeah, so I'm doing all that, and I'm also a part of the Just Keep Writing podcast, which is a cool crew of writers. We just kind of like I don't know, we just do deep dives into text and our writing philosophies and just like what we enjoy about this writing journey. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Brent C. Lambert Writes. I also have a personal one, but that's not as much about writing. Twitter, Brent C. Lambert. I refuse to call it X. It's still Twitter. Blue Sky, Brent C. Lambert as well. And I also have a website, brentclambert.com. So yeah, I try to keep it uniform, so you can find me at all those places.
Already. Thanks, Brent. If you didn't know, Brent's basically famous. Like it's just right there. We know now before everybody else knows. That's
uh,
all right, great. So we're gonna jump into it.
Yeah.
Cool. So my first question is, Brent, why this story? Like, why unnecessary chaos?
So I guess when I was approached by Dave to do something with Neon Hemlock, I had three ideas that I kind of pitched to him, and Unnecessary Chaos was one of those ideas. I didn't know what the title was going to be at the time. I just was like, "Hey, here's this idea about these two guys who are in love, but they get ordered to kill each other, blah blah." Blah. And he was kind of like, "I'm vibing with that one. Let's see you develop this one out." And so yeah, so you kind of like it kind of was Dave actually. Dave was the one who kind of was like, "I like this idea. Play with this and see what you can do with it." And then I was kind of like, "Okay, sure." So after he kind of like gave me the green light on the idea, I went and made an outline. Definitely, that outline is nothing like what the final product ended up being, but um, he liked it and he was like, "Let's get to work." And yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of that process.
And so since then, there was always going to be a novella because of how it was kind of going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Okay.
definitely approached to me as like, "Hey, this is going to be part of my novella series," which he was doing every year. I think he's pulled back a little bit on that just because like he's doing very well. So
Mhm.
I think the 4 books a year pace isn't quite as sustainable anymore. But he was doing that, and so I was part of that particular novella series, and yeah, so it was always going to be a novella.
Do you have any idea of like expanding it beyond that, or is it just like one of those contained novellas?
Honestly, so okay, so truthfully, I do have like two ideas. I have a prequel idea and I have a sequel idea. So the prequel idea, and for those like for everyone who's read the book, that y'all probably all have the same reaction. There's a character in this book who doesn't make it, and everyone has given me so much shit about it. Like I have
Mm.
gotten so many people hitting me up like, "How dare you? Like what do you mean?" They're like, I really like them. Like how you just gonna let them go like that?"
Okay.
And people were getting in my ass a little bit about it. So I was like, I feel y'all. I understand, and so I do have a prequel story in mind for this particular character because I was like, I know a lot of people rock with this character, and they definitely were giving me the business. So uh, this, I will satisfy the audience if the opportunity arises. I do have a prequel, and then I also got an idea for a sequel that kind of would be a little bit less Mr. and Mrs. Smith and more like Kill Billish in terms of the vibe.
Like a
So
revenge thriller?
yeah. So the basic idea, I mean, I can tell the basic idea because we're so far off from it ever existing as of yet. My basic idea for a sequel would be, uh, the other anarchist groups don't really believe what happened at the end of this book, and they're like,
Mm.
"We're coming to kill y'all because we think you're actually a bunch of liars and traitors." So
Okay.
that would be yeah,
That's interesting. So they developed like after, like you had
yeah.
did this, and then afterwards it was like, okay, these are other ideas that are orbiting around this piece.
Yeah. Because I like to think a lot about especially in this day and age how we're dealing with truth being manipulated and what's actually
Mhm.
true not being respected or are being filtered through people's what they need the truth to be instead of what the truth actually is. And that would be what I would want to really play with in terms of a sequel. Like if I was to do the sequel today, that would be kind of like I guess my thematic focus is like, how do we take the truth and make it what we want it to be instead of what it actually is?
Mm. Oh, this just reminds me of I just recently read Philip K. Dick, The Minority Report. Have you read
Oh,
it?
classic, classic. I've actually never, so confession, I've never read Philip K. Dick,
Okay.
but I have seen that movie and it is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
It's a really good movie.
obviously almost every movie, not all of them, but almost every one, the book is better. But it makes me think about what you said about how information is manipulated and how people are living their lives a certain kind of way based off of that
Right.
norm of information. That's what made me just kind of like I've been upset. Like I thought it was wow. I was a little blown away by it. It caught me off guard because I was like, it's gonna be too short. I'm gonna want more la la la, and it was like he ate me up. I was like, okay, this is how you do a novella. You keep it short, you keep it cute. And I'm like, so yeah, but it was like obviously you've seen the movie. The premise is just like this information is like this works. This is how it is. This is a norm. This is for the better good.
Right,
Is
right.
it actually for the better good? And what do people do when they believe X, Y, and Z? So yeah, okay, that's what's up. I
Yeah.
thought maybe you for some reason I just thought like when I read it, I was like, this seems like a bigger universe, and maybe you had to like shrink it to fit the novella.
I did. No, I
Okay.
did. No, I did. So the thing with me and like any story I create, even my short stories, I always create so much more of the
Mhm.
world than is ever seen in the text. And I find that I have to do that. Like I've tried to do projects where like I didn't create a whole lot of the world, where I just kind of tried to only create what was necessary,
Hmm.
and it just ends up feeling flat. It doesn't feel like lived in. It doesn't feel like I don't know. It doesn't. I want people to read my work and get the vibe that you got. That like, oh, there is so much else happening out here. Like I feel like there's at least 100 other stories happening. I'm just getting this one. So yeah, I don't think I can. I don't think I can ever finish a story without having done all of that work of like scaffolding out th- these um these worlds. Like I have to think about like, oh, what does the continent look like? Oh, what
Yeah.
happened 300 years ago? Or or what does this supply chain look like for this particular good? Even though none of that makes it into the story,
Right.
like I need to know it because I think it's what allows me to when I do draft, it makes me feel grounded in the world. Like I don't feel like
Mhm.
and because what I don't want, because what happens when I don't do that, I'm constantly asking myself, wait, what does that mean, or why is that there, or where did that
Yeah.
come from, and
'Cause
then
you're
I'm
out of
having
breath.
to go back and do that work anyway. So yeah, so definitely your assumption is correct. There's definitely a lot more going on in this world.
Okay. This also reminds me of have you seen it's an anime and a manga called Claymore?
I have not. No, I haven't.
Okay. I think his name is or the mangaka is Noriharu. I think it's
Okay.
Noriharu Yagi. Anyway, he did his interview after Claymore was over, and he's like, everybody expects like manga artists, particularly like shonen seinen manga, to tell a story about the whole world, the hero saving, all doing everything. But he was like, I just was telling this part of the story. Yeah, there's a war happening outside that you may or may not know about, but it's not particularly related to this story. And I always thought that was very interesting. It's just being focused on like this tale and not necessarily trying to tell everything that the story could tell or everything the universe could tell within that
Yeah.
one moment.
I think well, one, I'm going to write down that anime because that sounds like up my alley. But
I think the manga's better, but I'm
manga,
biased,
okay,
obviously.
okay.
But yeah,
Well,
it's,
I either
I'll
one
send
I'll
it to
check out
you.
because
Yeah.
I would say that sounds up my alley. But yeah, I'm the same way. Like, don't get me wrong, I love an epic fantasy. I think that's my bread and butter. Like, I do love that, but I don't think you. I think the problem is, and this is a problem I had as an earlier writer too, is that I think sometimes people want to start off at Infinity War when really they don't understand that Infinity War works because of all these smaller stories that came before it that built up to it. And I think sometimes, especially and I mean, I'm gonna blame Brandon Sanderson for this a little bit, but I think his school of thought has definitely created this sense of readership that like they want Infinity War right out the gate, like they want that battle that happens in Endgame, they want that on page one, and it's like you got to understand like to get to these huge epic stories you have to create the smaller personal ones first because that's what makes you care when exactly you building blocks. And I think yeah, so I do think sometimes that I think writers and readers sometimes have taken the wrong lessons from these grand epic stories, and they're focused on the end result without realizing the necessary character work and the smaller quiet moments that kind of like have to go into it to build up to that effect. I think that's why Attack on Titan was so successful, because like even though it's like fast paced and it's like coming at you like you feel like you're about to have a heart attack every other
I'm a
episode.
Attack on Titan critic, so I'm just
I was,
that'd be another conversation. I have to
that's a
go
whole other
there. Yeah, I mean,
what
yeah,
to
yeah.
on
I get
a
what you're saying. Yes, yes,
yeah
yeah. I
on
get
a
what you're saying.
grander scale,
He
you
did
know.
take his time out to really build out that world for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Because if they had did that last season from the beginning, people would be like, "Why is everybody
Yeah,
dying? Like, I don't understand. Like, what's happening?" So, yeah. So for me, I think you have to start with the smaller stories to and then build out.
yeah. That kind of reminds me of the I feel like what's the more common advice is like start with a short story, get good at writing short stories, and then go to like novellas and novels. I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of people like sort of tell folks that that's the route. And I
I
know some people go straight for novels, but like I was hearing like at the Hugos, that's where I heard like a lot of like that sort of rhetoric.
so for me at least, I don't necessarily buy into that advice just because I feel like each of those forms are entirely worthy and doing something on their own, and each requires a different skill set. And those skill sets
Mhm.
aren't necessarily translatable between the three. Like, there are plenty of amazing short fiction writers that stumble when they try to do, novels.
Larger
And there's
pieces.
lots of great novelists that stumble when they try to do shorter work. And I honestly, for me at least, I think, yeah, I think when people give that advice, and I'm not saying all, but I do think that there is a sense of there's definitely a sense of capitalistic like worth applied to those
Mhm.
steps, because it's like if you
Building
look
your
at it when people
resume.
say that, yeah, like a short
Yeah.
story is the one you get paid the least for. Your novella you get paid a little more. The novel you get paid more for. So it's like you're telling people to. I think yeah, I think the advice is I get the heart of it, but I think it's ultimately not fair to really categorize those three forms as like stepping stones of each other, because they just each demand different things of people.
That's rough. I think
Yeah.
that's a
So
good way.
yeah.
Another way to look at it. It was just like I was just thinking about that a lot once I heard it. It was like, should I like not work on the longer pieces and focus on some of my shorter pieces, which I have done like
Yeah.
in terms of like the last 2 years or whatnot. And so yeah. It's just interesting thing about what make how you play the game, like how
Yeah.
you
Yeah. No.
yeah. I think there's
And
like since there's a bunch of different ways to do it, it's like cool. And that
that.
just I forgot something you mentioned. Yeah, well you didn't mention that you and Devon did the Tor and Fire
Oh yes. Yes. Yes.
flash
Sorry.
fiction thing.
Yeah.
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 He's more famous than he already is. Sorry, y'all.
No, so read. Yes, I totally forgot about Breathe Fire, which was a really cool flash fiction anthology
It
we
was
did.
really cool. It was one of the
Yeah,
first things I really saw from
yeah.
that you and Devon did. Like during the pandemic, it was a
It was
really
during the
like weird
pandemic
time.
in the
Yeah.
summer of 2020 when things were just very like very stressful.
Really good
Things were,
stories too.
yeah, yeah, and it was like we the tour reached out to us about doing this anthology, and we kind of put together this anthology of black black flash fiction that kind of spoke to the idea of the anger that I think a lot of us felt in that moment, but also just feel constantly. I mean, James Baldwin has a quote, and I'm not going to get the quote right, but where he kind of talks about to be like any degree of conscious about what's been done to black people and continues to be done to black people in America is to basically walk around enraged all the
Yeah.
time. And I think we were trying to speak to that moment and like give people the space to creatively just like let that fire out and let that rage out. And and also I always when people talk about anger, they talk about it like it's this always this bad thing, it's this negative thing, it's this wrong thing. And it's like, no, anger, when properly applied, gets shit done. Anger, when properly applied, holds people accountable and makes change happen. So I think we were trying to definitely we're definitely trying to use that anthology to kind of speak to those things. And we came across some really, really good stories. Like I loved every single one of them, and they all did something different. It was very hard picking the final stories for that anthology because we had so much good work. It was yeah, it was tough. We were we were having to I felt like King Solomon, like having to like choose between which baby, I guess, or trying to split the baby or whatever, however that story goes. But yeah, no, it was a very interesting anthology.
It's free online if
Yeah,
you want
free
to check
online,
it
free. Yes, free,
out
free
as
online.
well. Which is interesting because I feel like flash fiction is having, yeah, I guess it's still having a moment. It's kind of like a
Yeah,
moment right now. It's like or a niche moment, I think.
I think so, and I think I mean
Is
that's
it gonna
probably
last? I think that's been the question. Is like, is it like gonna be long term? You know
I
what I
think
mean? Is
so.
it the trend of the day or
I think it'll last. I don't know if it'll necessarily think. I mean, that's the thing with like anything with writing. It's all cyclical. Like the stuff that's like cool today may not be cool tomorrow, but it still exists. It's still it's still out there. Like I mean, horror is having a huge resurgence right now. Horror is seeing a big moment, and horror is when that moment passes, horror is still gonna be here. People are still gonna be writing
right?
horror,
What it may
or
not
like romantasy is having
romance.
a huge
I
moment,
was
a
about to
huge
say
moment,
romance.
right?
Let's
Huge
go.
moment,
They're
huge moment.
going mad over the romance. I don't
Yeah,
know what's happening in the
it's it's
world.
it's a huge moment, and I think part of that is like you got to kind of read the tea leaves
Mhm.
of society, and I think in some weird way, horror is probably a comfort for people right now because we are seeing so much in the way of inhumanity and horror being inflicted on people right now. And I guess like
Yeah, and that's certainly like the basis. So even like there's always sort of like what's happening, the context around that, what we
yeah,
speculate even more. Like
yeah.
what you don't see is like even more violent than you can imagine. So
No, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's just like that ecosystem or that atmosphere is like setting up. Yeah,
And I particularly think that BIPOC horror is having a moment because as someone else put it, for to be to be of color in this world is to have been living a horror story just about your whole life in one way or another. You have been
I feel like we kind of really saw that with the magical realism, and then now like the surrealism is getting popular, or the Afro surrealism is getting really trendy popular because of um Pio and I can't think of his name, the Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Oh my goodness.
oh Donald
Yeah,
yeah
him and I know some of Laval, Victor Laval stuff, even though it's not like actually Afro surreal, but I think it has that like those things are kind of really being trendy and being adaptable.
yeah
And you see,
yeah
like only I feel like it's very small, but a very small amount of things are kind of crossing over or having this translation. We had a little bit with like N.K. Jemisin, and then the I can't think of her name right now, but the lady it was with Star Wars people, but
oh
Tony
Tomi Adeyemi.
yeah, she won the pitchfork contest, which was even more, the spectacle behind all of that as well too. It was just
Right.
interesting. I thought that time, like then the pandemic happened. NK, Tony, like Jordan, like all of these things were like boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom, and then like some of it's like I think the reverberation of that. I think we see. I know some of the stuff Victor has been working for a while to get his stuff adapted, but it's coming into play during this like certain era of TV or media, I feel like now. And I think a lot of it's leaning on that surrealism too, without it being like this is a surreal movie or surreal being or
Right.
whatever like that. So
Right.
yeah, that's interesting. I think it's gonna be interesting. I'm excited to see what comes out, particularly of like maybe not some of the bigger stuff, but the stuff that gets in between the big and like things that is gonna be so much nobody's gonna see, but like what do come out of that middle ground. I feel like it's gonna be really interesting with the ways in which like people have more access to create like laptops or more or now you can write. I used to write on my phone before I got a laptop, Like I used to just have everything on my phone and was just like doing it like that because
Well,
I
now
was
they
the
have
only way.
they have the little Bluetooth keyboards that will connect to your phone, so you don't even
That's a
have to
lot.
use your phone. You could just like be typing,
Yeah,
through
I,
your
I got one
phone.
from the iPad, but I didn't even think about that for the phone. But yeah, like I think it's just more. I think folks are gonna adapt more to like what they have, and like I don't know if folks still go to like the library and sit at the computer and like do it. Like I mean, I was doing that's how I used to grow up and do it. So, but I don't know if that's a thing anymore, or I don't know if people write in notebooks. I know some people do
Oh,
like
I do.
writers, but like
Oh yeah,
I
no,
don't
I'm
know if it's
definitely.
like the thing anymore to like fill notebooks up and like.
See, I think that is actually starting to come back. I'm a notebook
Oh,
writer.
okay.
I am. I'm a notebook writer. I've always been. So for me at least, I guess like I have to be able to switch between different media types
Mm.
when creating a story. So like for me, I cannot world build in a Word document. I have to world build on a notebook. Like I have to like write all the details out in a notebook. Like I can't like I don't know, something about my brain. It doesn't I'm not I can't create a world when I'm like in a document. Now drafting, obviously I can draft in the Word doc, but sometimes even then, like when I need to pull away from thinking about word count and how many pages I'm getting done, sometimes just going to a notebook and just drafting in the notebook kind of frees me from that pressure of like, oh, I need to add 1,000 words to the story today because I don't know how many words I'm adding. I'm just writing on the,
Right.
on the paper. So for me at least, notebooks, I don't ever foresee myself getting rid of them because like it's always been a part of my process. And yeah, I definitely need it. Like I usually have like 3 or 4 like notebooks that are just dedicated to like world building and they'll be always off in the
I
corner.
was running out of space. So I got like the cloud storage and I just have it all on my phone. But I was like literally running out of space and I was like, how am I gonna keep moving? Like I still have duffel bags now with a lot of it, but it's like
Yeah.
and then I have books too. So I was like, I'm losing on both ends.
See, I'm not precious about my notebooks. Like usually once I fill them up,
You let them go?
I will write on the
Oh,
document what I need out of them, and then yeah, I
mhm.
let them go. Then I'll throw them away.
Maybe
Cause
I
like
gotta pick that ritual, yeah.
yeah, like because the thing is like I'm in the same boat with space. I'm like I don't want to be devoured by notebooks that are like filled up. So like once it serves its purpose, I take what I need out of it, keep it on a document somewhere, and then like get rid of it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
But
right.
I do have to write. Like I do have to world build on paper. There's just no getting around that for me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get around
I've
that.
like, yeah, I've been feeling. I do it sometimes too differently. Depends on like I said, sometimes I'm doing my notes on my phone. Sometimes I'm on my laptop. Sometimes I do it on the iPad, and then sometimes I like. Usually, if it's something shorter, because I feel like I'm out of season from like writing
Right,
long.
right.
I remember that's all we used to do. It's so weird now. Like that's how I started out, just writing and writing, and now it's like after a while, my hand starts to hurt from writing, like with and
Yeah,
I'm like, I gotta get, it's like gotta get back in the groove, and it's like I don't do it that I write, but it's never for that like alone. Like I'm never like really writing a story, so that's an interesting thing I have to adjust to. It's like getting back in that groove of like having that little mark on my finger that I'm like pressing and writing, and this is like
yeah,
but I really do like that sort of that physical touch of it, and not like typing, but the action of like
yeah,
expressing, communicating that. I feel like I have to type something so a couple times, maybe in a different document to get it in my head, where I could write it maybe one good time and know what it is. So that has been something too.
See, I feel like I get in the flow easier when I'm just writing by hand because like I don't
Mm.
have the distractions of like I can't click and look at Twitter or I can't click and look
Yeah.
at,
Oh
my
yeah.
email. Like I'm
Yeah, like
just
touching
it's
that.
just me, the notebook, and the blank page. So that's it. And I think sometimes when I'm struggling to like get out of distraction and to find
Mhm.
the flow, that's when I turn to the notebooks too, because that
Okay.
kind of like
Yeah.
grounds me.
Too,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, cool. Let's see what here. You mentioned a little bit about Neon Hemlock and
Yeah, yeah.
experience. I'm just yeah, just like we just want to touch on that. How was it? Would you recommend it? Et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously your novella's out and it's like a success and like you're happy. But yeah, like
So with Neon Hemlock, so for those who don't know what Neon Hemlock is, it is a smaller press that they specialize in queer speculative fiction. So they do a lot of novellas. They also do a lot of anthologies. And they have given a spotlight to many queer creatives who may not have been able to get their stories published through larger venues. I know for me, I don't know if Unnecessary Chaos is something that a larger publisher may have picked up. I can't say for certain, but I can say that I am very much happy with the decision of it going through Neon Hemlock, especially in terms of like the level of creative input I was given in the design of the product, like the chapter illustrations, the actual cover itself. Like I'm I don't think I couldn't have asked for a better first cover. Like it's amazing. Um, and then Dave is just very good about being conversational when in the editing process, because and I've talked about this on my own podcast and in other places, but getting this thing finished was one of the most difficult writing things I've ever done for a variety of reasons. But Dave was more than accommodating, willing to work with me, willing to crack the story open and really get into the nuts and bolts of it and make it something that that I could be proud of. So yeah, I would I very much enjoyed working with Neon Hemlock.
There it is, folks. Submit to Neon Hemlock. Novellas. Don't be
Yeah,
shy. Or as
yeah.
we say, don't self reject.
Don't self reject. Do not self reject. When that call goes out, do not self reject. Especially for those of us who are marginalized. I think we do it to ourselves a lot because like we think that like we're not ready, or we think we're not we think our skill set isn't there yet, or and I'm here to tell you I've been in some submission inboxes, and 9 times out of 10 you're more ready than you realize. Because I see what I see what some of these straight white men put in these submission inboxes, and they do it proudly. They do it proudly, like you can't shake their confidence. So I think we all, myself included, we could all definitely stand to take on some of that energy. And yeah, don't self reject. And Neon Hemlock's a great place to work with. Once again, like I would, if and when that call comes and you think you fit the criteria and you have something for it, I would totally say to submit it.
Alrighty. Now we get into the juicy part, Brent.
All right.
Who's your favorite character?
Whoa, okay. That's like asking me to pick between my kids.
Well, hello.
Okay,
That's
so
every good little like horror thing. Do you pick the
I
kid or
know,
you
pick
kill
the
the other
kid. Like,
kid? Like,
so I actually my favorite character is the one that like people have given me the most shit about. Sajime. Sajime is my favorite
okay.
character. And the thing is, she did not start off as my favorite. Like she became my favorite during edits, during the process of edits and building up. But it's like narrowly a favorite because like I feel like Carmola is like right behind her. But like I just yeah. But if I had to pick, Sajime for sure is a favorite.
Okay. Well, next up is, can you read an excerpt from the
Yes,
story
I
featuring
got one
the
ready.
favorite
Yes,
character?
I
This way
got
y'all
one
can
ready.
get why it's the favorite character.
Yeah.
I don't
I
think we're
was trying
doing
to like
too many spoilers. I feel like it's like I'm trying not to be extra spoilery. I know it's been out for a little bit, but like,
I think I picked one that wasn't like I
yeah.
think I picked a little excerpt that
I mean, if it's out of
wasn't.
context, I feel like it's gonna be kind of hard for them to like.
Well, I can set it up a little bit. So
Yeah. And I think it's cool. I think it's like if it's more more mystery, the more attractive. Probably. That's my thoughts. It's like,
well,
oh, what
I'll
happened
give a
here? Let
very,
me go
very
find out
brief,
more.
very brief setup for this. Okay, so this scene is one of my main characters, Office, is actually trying to meet up with Sajime to get her assistance on something, and she kind of gives him some snark in the process. So I will read this here. Okay, all right, let me make sure it's all set up and good. Okay. The red letters above the door were in the native language of Sajime's island home, Dayamai. Alphys couldn't pronounce them properly, but they meant all wounds are welcome here. Sajime took care of her patients free of charge. Althus swallowed a mouthful as he entered and nodded at the medic at the desk, a fat man with intensely attractive lips. He wondered what battlefield this guy had walked away from. Sajime's employees practiced the kind of medicine most learned resisting the machinations of empire. Just here to see Sajime. The man wasn't immediately charmed by Althus. Ah, you must be what has her in such a shitty mood. She's in the back. Uh, thanks. He gave the medic a quick nod and headed towards the office. I gotta go up here. The entire place had once been painted in a calming sky blue, but it needed a touch up. A few of the chem lights buzzed on and off. It reminded Althus of the therapy clinics back in Tashiden, one-time simplicity dulled by years of disregard. But if he'd already annoyed Sajime, he wasn't going to start giving out any decorating tips. Sajime called out to him before he even got to her door. You're lucky I don't have any patience right now. I kick your ass out. Althus poked his head in and summoned a mischievous grin. Come on, you really can't hate me being here that much. It's the festival of bone tails. I hate everyone from out of town right now. All my favorite places are packed with you annoying assholes. She glanced at his food. Picardo rice? I love that shit. I thought it was. Sajime held up a finger to cut him off. They changed the name to make more tourists buy it. Can't be too foreign for Imperials. I see where the front desk guy gets the pissiness from. He doesn't like anyone. Sajime flipped through a stack of medical records from behind her desk. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be getting ready? I don't really want to be alone right now. Needed to clear our head. Our work isn't easy. She put the stack down and pulled out a bottle from a desk drawer. I don't have any glasses. Althus assessed the label. Rochati vintage? All right, so yeah, so that's just kind of like them two interacting. I just kind of want to like get the vibe of like their friendship and how like she she always gives some shit
I'm about to say,
constantly.
yeah, the
Yeah,
attitude comes off. She has an attitude.
yeah. She's constantly giving him shit about everything. I mean, he kind of
Which
deserves
he
it though.
rightfully deserves.
Yeah. He kind of earns it. Like he earns
He
it.
was
So
not thinking with this.
mm-mm, he
He
definitely
was thinking
yeah
with a lot of other things, but it
yeah
wasn't logically. I tell you that.
He definitely was not thinking like he wasn't. You're right. He was not thinking logically, and she kind of like she's like the reason I love her is that like she calls him on it, but she still loves him anyway, and she's still there to support him anyway. So it's like, I feel like that's the kind of family that you want, the family that's like gonna tell you like boy, like get your act together, but at the same time they got your back. So yeah, that's kind of what I was going for with her character, and just like why I think like I slowly fell in love with her as like we got closer to the finished version of the story. So
Okay. Let me see what else. Well, we kind of already talked about that one. About if you knew or not, like necessary chaos,
yeah.
like the first like to come out. So I guess he was like Dave hit you up. So like I
Yeah,
don't know if you
yeah.
knew
But
Dave was gonna hit you up.
no, I didn't actually. It
Okay.
was a total surprise when he hit me up. Yeah, I was kind of like out of the blue because honestly, when he hit me up, I had the idea, but I was not intending to really flesh it out and work on it. I was just kind of like, oh, it's an idea. I'll get to. I was actually working on this novel, which I ended up trunking. But yeah. So when he hit me up, that kind of like got the ball rolling on that.
It's like what is my supervisor called? Entanglements. It's like these
Yeah,
things
yeah,
come in our lives, and next thing you know, like it changes us and changes what's happening.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I think that's also interesting. Like you said, you after going through ethics, you fell in love with this character more. After hearing how people responded about
yeah,
this character or this situation, made you feel a different way about the text that you didn't do before. I
yeah.
think
No,
eventually,
yeah.
because it's like it's not over after you write it and put it out. It's still moments that are like gonna happen that reverberate back to that.
Yeah, no, it is interesting like how in a lot of ways like the text is almost organic, I guess, in terms of like how it's perceived and grows after it's out in the world, just because like I had an interview where someone asked me if I would classify it as romanticy, and my immediate reaction was like, no. I wouldn't do that. Like, that was my knee jerk reaction. But then I kind of sat back and thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I wasn't intentionally thinking that, but I was like, but at the same time, if that's how a reader accesses it, and that's what makes it work for them, then who am I to question that? Like,
Yeah.
the multiple things can be true at once. Like that reader, that could be their access point, and it could be true for them, and it could also be true that maybe that wasn't my original intention.
Yeah.
But like,
I think I
I,
can see it because of the romance. It's such a focal part.
right,
Like
right,
it's like they're actively dealing with and it's actively evolving and like they're making decisions based off of that. So
right,
yeah, I
right,
definitely can see that. I didn't think it was like romance first though. Like that wasn't
yeah,
I didn't think that was the main sort of genre, I guess, whatever you say.
yeah,
Um, oh no, that's cool. And I guess one of the things is about it, it's like, okay, my thoughts is what you're as you're building it up, like I guess like in terms of how the romance came to like be or how the characters came sort of like into play.
yeah,
Because it's like we kind of, we get like, okay, they were how they sort of kind of meet and then like they're already like established and then like this sort of back and forth. But like I guess like what was the I guess maybe like the thought or the process behind of like, okay, they're gonna be not just like I think you're attractive, like and I meet you and I'm gonna assassinate you, but we're gonna actually be in a relationship, even though we're like lying to each other and the people we care about, because we want to like engage in this like desirable activity. And I kind of feel like it has a mirror with like homophobia, even though in the world that they live in is susceptible for them, or it's like more open. It seems like
yeah. Well, you're not
because
wrong
of
to read that. You're
because
not
of the
wrong.
beginning, obviously.
Yeah. No, I
The
mean the
shock
beginning.
there. Brent takes you there right off the bat, which is like, why not? When I
So
read it, I was like, wait, is this too early? But now it's like, you know what? Why the fuck not?
Beyonce inspired that actually, which is so fun. Most
Really?
people like Beyonce, but yeah. So that opening scene, there was an interview with Miguel, and he had wrote the song "Rocket" for
Mm,
Beyonce, and he was telling the story. Like he was like, "Oh, I got in the room with her, and we're trying to figure out what to write." And basically, she was like, "Give me what you got, don't hold back." And it was basically like, what would I say to Beyonce, or what would I want Beyonce to say to me if I could get her to say
yeah.
anything? And the song basically starts off, "Let me sit this ass on you."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh, well, you know what? I'm gonna be that bold in my opening. Damn it, I'm just gonna come straight with it. We're gonna have these two beautiful black men and being, in love and sexual just right out
Mm,
the gate." And I'm glad I did that because I feel like it establishes very early on either you're rocking with this story and everything it's talking about, or you're gonna check out. And
yeah.
and if you're checking out, that's great. I'm giving you the option of checking out right at the
Very
beginning.
early.
Yeah.
After
So
the opening credits.
yeah. So you either gonna rock with this or you're gonna be like, nah, this ain't for me, and go about your way. So yeah, that was kind of my thought process. So Beyonce in her way inspired that particular drive behind that opening scene. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do something that I would want to see right now in the story, right out the gate. That I don't think we get to really see much in science fiction and fantasy. So
Okay. And speaking of that, I know you like music, obviously, but like, so you had a playlist for this, or like, or just
so
like songs or something, like
this
besides
whole
Rocket?
thing
'Cause
was
I
inspired by
didn't
a
see
song.
Rocket, but like,
This whole thing was inspired by a song, actually. So the initial seed of the first scene that I got in my head came from a Bryson Tiller song,
oh
and
wow,
it's called Next to You. Next to You. Bryson Tiller, Next to You.
did I
So
know that? I feel like I might know that next
so
to you.
I listened to it, and like this song should not be inspiring visions of like two people trying to like kill each other in a sexy moment. But that's how my imagination works, and that's where it went when I heard the song. So I was like, okay. And so that's when I put it to the side. I heard the song and I was like, I really like this song, and it's inspiring this scene in my head, and I can't get away from it. So I jotted it down and just kind of like put it to the side, and then yeah, and then when Dave approached me, I kind of like that ended up being like my Spotify song for the year because I listened to it so much. It was like you've listened to this song 416 times. So yeah, it was yeah. So that one inspired it, but there was definitely some
Well,
other songs
Bryson
too.
Tiller.
It was who else that I had? Doja Cat Streets. That song was
Okay,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can see
So
that.
yeah, so like a lot of the songs I was listening to kind of had like a sultry but dangerous vibe to it. So like yeah, that's what I was kind of like. I was kind of in my playlist like when I was drafting it, trying to keep the creative juices flowing.
Okay. And that kind of makes me think. I know you talked about a little bit about like genre per se. Like what genre, or how would you describe it? Like dark fantasy or urban
Almost like
fantasy? Maybe I don't know.
I would say maybe like dark science fantasy. I don't know, like
Hmm.
because it's and I guess I kind of glad I don't know, but um because I feel like I want to break away from like fantasy being trapped in anything from ancient times up until right before industrial revolution. I feel like most fantasy is like trapped in that, and I'm like, no, I want to break us from those shackles. Let's move us to
Right.
different eras. So for me, the easiest way I could tell people, like whatever you would classify Final Fantasy 7 or 8, I guess that's what you would classify this novella as. Because like in terms of like how I visualize the world, in terms of the
Hmm.
way the technology and the magic blends together, I think like those two video games are probably like the easiest summations for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know what
They
I'll ever
kind of have
classify
that
them.
like machinery,
Yeah, yeah,
gothic a little approach to it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ah,
yeah.
that's
Because
interesting. Those are that's having another resurgence. It's another cycle coming back.
yeah, yeah, and I want to ride that cycle because like I love I love those two games. Those two games are
Yeah.
like huge influences. So like definitely, I feel like if I had to say like where I would place these books, I place this book, I would say maybe in the same vein of books like Jade City, the Craft Sequence books, maybe like City of Stairs, possibly, where like there's very large fantastical fantasy elements operating in what is a modern-ish secondary world. So
Yeah. It feels very like close to where we at right now. That's why I was like maybe urban fantasy because that's what I call it, like urban
yeah,
fantasy. Like
maybe
if
like
it's
epic
like
urban fantasy. I don't know. Like
I
yeah,
know,
maybe
but
yeah,
I think of like obviously the Harry Potter or the Magicians or all of those ones where it's like they got cell phones or they're on the laptop or they're using social media or it has that
yeah,
sort of like trend of like this is the norm now, and then it's the fantastical element through
right,
usually some supernatural something. And it's
right.
like I like how yours is like also, and maybe because it's a novella too, that it's not like I'm just discovering I got powers or I'm just awakening my
Yeah,
sexuality
no.
and my
I,
powers together, or like some of the more like cliche ones. It's just like, no, I've been about this life and did
look,
more
there
of that. Like,
there are so many people writing those stories, and there are so many people doing them well. I'm not trying to be in that lane. I'm well. Let me not say not be in that lane because you never know. I may have a story that
right,
fits in that.
your
I
next
don't
one,
want
you
to.
be like,
Yeah, I don't want to box myself out and have to eat crow later, like 2 years from now. Like, well, you said, so I don't want to be in that space. But I think for me personally, though, I do think that there's a huge gap in stories for people who have life experience, for people who have been through some things, and those people deserve stories too. Like how often do you see a story of a 50 plus woman as the protagonist in a science fiction fantasy story? It's pathetically
right,
small, but it's
yeah,
like to me, I'm like, that's an interesting protagonist because how much have they lived? How much have they seen? Like, how much have
yeah.
they, you know, just the wealth of experience and memories and life? Like that to me.
Honestly, I feel like they now it's like after Kill Bill, I feel like it's like we gotta have women doing tough men stuff. And it's like there's other things out there to describe like how a woman would engage in like a society. It's
Oh,
not like she always
absolutely.
have to like take out the sword and like cut down 30 people because the guy would normally cut down 30 people if he had to fight them. It's
Well,
like
'cause
I feel like it's gonna like that has become like really trendy and popular in terms of like if you do have a woman protagonist, it's something like that. She's just a
Yeah,
guy or whatever.
I think that's what happens when the dominant group wears a marginalized group like a costume, and they try to tell their story. Like I think sometimes a lot of male authors, they don't actually want to engage with what women are writing and what they want to see and what the kind of art they're actually producing. They're just more concerned with getting that bonus point of like, oh well, look at me, I'm writing this, tough female character. You see it also with there's, and I don't know if you know this, but I feel like there's a surge in white men writing women of color protagonists I've seen lately, and it's kind of
I
like
can
that's
believe
a
it.
little
I'm not shocked. I'm not
I,
shocked about
yeah,
anything
and
no
I'm
more.
just like I'm a little icked out by it. Like I'm not gonna tell
It's
them not
not
to
cool
do
to
it.
like about white people right now, apparently.
Well, and I'm not gonna tell them not to do it, but also it does. I'm not. It makes me a little icked out. I'm not gonna lie. Or or what I've also noticed too, which is part of the reason why I was so unapologetic about the sex in Unnecessary Chaos, is because there are so many white cis women who write gay men, and
I heard
they
that's really
don't.
it's a really popular series right now. I thought a fantasy one that
There's
I
there's a
think is
there's
gonna
a
like
few.
that's really popular right now. Because I was gonna
Yeah,
read it, but then they told it was a white lady, and I was like,
there's
I
a
don't
few.
know.
And the thing is, again, I'm not going to tell them not to do it, but when you read some of these stories, you're like, have they ever met a gay man? Or have they actually ever talked to one of us? It's like, because you'll read these stories and like they'll have these gay men, they'll meet the first guy that they've ever met and they fall in love and they go off into the sunset and they have a decades long relationship or whatever. And it's like that happens. I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen, but for a lot
It's
of
a
us, that
deception.
is not,
Deception.
yeah, that is not the
It's
rule
not the
for
rule. It's
that is
not the
not the rule
regular.
for most gay men. And it's like, where are those stories? Where are those, where did those stories
The
happen? And I'm
messages. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, not to be crass, but like, where's the stories of the guys on the hookup apps who fight each other and they don't even know, they don't remember each other's name after they hook up.
Right.
That's a real thing. Like, and I think sometimes like in an effort to be a good one or to create a good one, they don't tell the stories that like actually happen.
Yeah.
So I think that was one thing I wanted, and it is one thing I've in some reviews I've seen people not be so happy with, is that like I wanted there to be sex and I wanted them to be sexual. And it's like
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
mean, they
necessarily,
had like one sex scene. I
right.
feel
It
like
wasn't for me, and
they
that's
could
what.
have been way, yeah, they
Okay,
could have done it at least 3 times in my mind.
I am glad that you felt that way because there have been people who have like act like I was writing full on smut, and
No, oh my
I was
God.
like, this feels very tame.
Absolutely
Like
not. They
I was like,
would
I
laugh
feel
with the
pretty
lady, but
right. Like I've read some romance books. My stuff is like not even a one on the spice scale, and
no,
and,
I
and
thought it was cute. I really thought it was cute. I would like even recommend it to teenagers. It wasn't like,
like I felt like my stuff was really really low key, but in some of these, and it kind of goes to show you, I think people's perceptions of gay men
mhm.
is like they're like, oh, this is a lot of sex. Like whoa, like you guys. I'm like, wait,
In public,
like what? Like oh my god, like
they're
I'm
not hiding behind the bushes
I'm,
and
I'm shook. They're like and
no, that's real.
and so and honestly, those critiques only affirm for me that like, oh, I need to keep doing this because if that little bit is shocking to you, like wow, like you really need to get out into the world. Like you really
Yeah.
need to actually know know the gay community. Like if you're thinking this is like
It's like,
pearl
hey,
clutching,
reminds me of like, you're like, this is spicy. And it's like, this
like
isn't
what? Like
spicy.
no, this isn't spicy.
It's got a little season, a little shake, but
It's
it
just
ain't
like
spicy.
it's just like when they go to the restaurants and they ask you for something, and they all they get is a little pepper, and they talking about they start choking, like they're like it's too spicy, like that's what this literally like a book
Yeah. I
version of
don't
that.
think sometimes like readers or reviewers realize is like they want to sanitize it. They don't let it like let that sort of uncomfort or let that push them to like sometimes explore. Like
Yeah,
usually it's like maybe through conversation, but it's like it's a response that the writer is like trying to invoke. You know, it's like yeah, the writer writes to a specific audience, but it's context to the people who not actually a
yeah,
part of those like unique groups. So yeah,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's interesting too. Well, I mean, I don't know. The way I feel like the way the world going, we need more smut, more all of it. It's like they're literally, I don't know, they're trying to ban every little thing that we got. So
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think like those reactions kind of showed to me that like we have definitely got to stand firm and 10 toes down in telling authentic stories and not backing down from telling the parts that may not always be so pretty or that may not always be you know so acceptable. And I think unfortunately this is a result of this pendulum, I think, swinging too far the other way, where people expect uh, a certain kind of story to fit a certain kind of identity group. And it's like, oh, well, you can't tell those kind of stories because it makes us look bad, or you can't tell that story
you already
because
look bad,
you
but
and it's like,
the
but
next
it's
time
my
you do it, gonna
experience.
make it
It's what
better.
I
Yeah,
went through, And it's like, well, so you're gonna tell me I can't talk about my lived experience because
the
you're worried
mundane.
about the
Yeah,
perception. And so yeah, I think as creatives, we definitely have to like just stand firm and being like, no, this is my story and it's I'm telling it authentically. If you're here for it, you're here for it. If you're not, you're not. You can and because I can't write for everybody and I'm not gonna write for everybody. Because like the truth of the day is that you can write something and nobody will ever read it. So at
yeah.
the very least, you better make sure you're happy with the story.
No, that's
So
real. Because once it goes out, it's out.
yeah,
And I mean,
or it may
yeah,
never go out. It may never even get past. It may
yeah,
even never
you're
get
stuck
past
with
being a
your baby.
draft. So you gotta love it. You gotta at least love it. Like and yeah, so that I feel like that has been definitely something I think about. Like I'm not backing down from that. I'm not backing down from telling it authentically. And I think that there's a lot of aspects of the gay experience and also the black experience and where the two meet that don't get talked about in science fiction and fantasy nearly enough. So
I agree. The other question we had before we move into the Q&A is as you know, as you mentioned, you're an editor also, and you're right. And so, how has being an editor like impacted or influenced your writing?
um it has definitely
I
made
mean,
me a
let's
str-
say if you edit specifically for, because I know you did some flash fiction. I know you
yeah,
did.
yeah, and I bounced around. I
Like
did
you just
something
had it
for
like for, but
Escape Pod. Yeah, I bounced around a little bit. Editing for me, it's sharpened my eye in terms of like knowing when something's working and when it's not in my own stuff. Like I can be typing, and this is the part that I wish a few authors talk about it, but not everybody talks about it. There's a part when you're an author where like your skill to see when something isn't working is higher than your ability to fix it sometimes. And so you'll be like, I know this isn't working, but I don't have the skill set to fix it yet. And I think that is what editing has kind of done for me in some places is like I can be drafting and I'm like, ugh, that's not gonna work, but I don't know how to fix it yet. So I have to keep going through the draft until something clicks. And so yeah, so it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Like my eye is much sharper in terms of like knowing what's going to work and like also just understanding the mechanics of story. Like like okay, is this a solid like structure? Like is this structure actually going to hold up, or is it going to be crushed under the weight of its own own excess? But yeah, so I would say being an editor is definitely just like sharpened my eye and my own work and being able to know like if something's working immediately. And also too, I understand my own process a little better now. I feel like I know now that I just have to ideal vomit in the beginning to be able to get to a finished draft. Like I can't avoid the idea of vomit stage of it. And I just being an editor has just kind of like helped me just kind of like understand like, okay, this is the steps of Brent and how he gets to his finished story.
It's just always great to learn yourself better, you know?
Yeah, 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 for sure.
All right, cool. If anyone have any questions for Brent, feel free to. I think we have like three people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
or
that's
you
me
can jump
anything.
up at
I am.
once. But yeah,
Um, you kind of answered my question already, I think, because it was genre related. Because I'm a romance reader, and I really loved how the romance was handled in the book. Like it was really well balanced with all of like the other
Thank
elements
you.
of the story, rather than I think I find outside of romance proper, I guess it tends to be kind of like a second tier thing or like a thing on the side and other things are focused. But your story in general just moves out so many genres for me. And I was super curious about what's the writing process like? How do you approach that in writing? Is it that you're just doing the story and it just happens to just cover all these different areas? Or are you sort of consciously like incorporating like or keeping in mind, I guess, certain maybe templates or tropes from certain genres and like deliberately like reworking them because it's like kind of horror, but it's also dystopian, it's also romance, it's also like science fantasy, and it works really well, like seamless.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you. No, I really appreciate that. I guess for me, honestly, it was just kind of what the story is. And for me, that's like a good thing, also a scary thing, because I know like later on people are gonna like want to be able to slot my stories into a thing. And it's kind of like if I naturally write this way, I don't know if I don't know if I would be able to meet that expectation. But I will say though, in the editing though, I think is when I did kind of like make sure to feel like certain elements were balanced. Particularly, Mr. and Mrs. Smith was actually something that was kind of like in my head, like as I was like editing. And so I was thinking, okay, there's got to be the turning point. There's got to be the moment that makes because my biggest thing, I think one of the biggest things I was focused on was like when Vade decides to switch sides. I was like, I have to make that convincing because like that's really gotta if that moment doesn't work, then I feel like the whole story is gonna fall apart. So I did I did focus a bit on making sure that the turning point was valid and that he had enough reasons up until that point to love out this to be like I'm willing to just completely disregard everything I've ever known. So I think when it came to the editing, I did think a little more in terms of like, okay, what beats from romance do I need? What beats do I need from like a thriller, and how to try to like balance it. And I'm glad you think I balanced it because there was definitely moments I was like, oh, this is really hard. I don't know if this is gonna work, but yeah, no, it was definitely something I thought about in editing for sure.
Yeah. And I love that you opened like so straightforward with like the sexiness and stuff. I was like, yes, this is my book. So I support that move entirely.
Yeah, I really just wanted people to be like, I just wanted to give readers the option of knowing if this book is going to be for them or not. I'm going to give it to you right out the gate, and you will either love it or you will be like, this Brent Lambert guy is crazy. I'm not dealing with him anymore. So, yeah.
And as a queer reader too, I think it signaled a lot for me in terms of what kind of world they were in and the fact that they could have that scene right there. Like it was very you kind of not necessarily know how that's going to go when people are writing it because of course it can be more, I guess, traumatic in that respect. So I actually
Right.
really like that opening scene was kind of just like so well done in different ways. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I definitely wanted to. I wanted to avoid the trauma, and not to say that there's not a space for that when it does come up. I'm sure that there is, but sometimes I'm like, why can't we just ride dragons, or why can't we just do spells and have fun and have adventures and be in love and like have tension, but that tension not necessarily be rooted in the fact that we're gay or that we're black. Like, yeah. LP. LP has heard me say that many, many times. I have that's like one of my catchphrases at this point. Like, just let black people ride dragons. Like, why not? Like, just let us ride dragons.
All right, do we got another question for Brent? Okay, I actually do got two more questions, Brent.
I've got one.
All
Oh,
right.
okay, cool.
I was wondering about you've referred to Mr. and Mrs. Smith a lot in terms of it being an influence in the story. Did you know that all along, or was it like after the fact you kind of figured out that it was a comparable story?
I actually knew that all along. So that one kind of came along when after I listened to that Bryson Tiller song like on repeat obsessively for a while, and the scene was there, and I was like, this is definitely like some Mr. and Mrs. Smith vibes. But in the moment, I didn't and it was one of my favorite movies, so I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of cool. But that I didn't really start thinking about adding that into the scaffolding until day after Dave approached me, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, I need to use this kind of like as a sort of root inspiration and then go out from there. I didn't want to, obviously do a beat for beat type thing, but it's like I wanted it to yeah, because I just kind of felt like, I still wanted it to be some sort of kind of liberation discussions happening in the work, even as it's being a lighter work. Well, I say lighter, but now a lot of people are telling me there's definitely darker moments in it, so maybe it's not so light. But yeah, I definitely wanted it not to be a beat for beat match with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but I wanted it to kind of feel like it had some of the same harmonies. So.
Do you feel like there's other comps that apply?
So in terms, like I mentioned it before, but like in terms of like there's definitely a lot of Final Fantasy 8 in it actually, in terms of like the child soldiers being trained up to be these like super weapons and being sent out to handle various things. So there's definitely a seed of Final Fantasy 8 in that. So I don't know if I necessarily a comp, but there's definitely an inspiration for that. Yeah, what else did I have that really kind of like, so like the magic system with two voice, so that I didn't necessarily get that from a particular show, but I got it from the idea of the code breakers that existed in World War II, and like how that the native language was used as a code in World War II. So I kind of like drew on that, and then that kind of thematically became a statement about code switching, I guess. Yeah, which I've talked about in some other places too. But yeah, so that it is not. I think Mr. and Mrs. Smith is the most like direct one for one inspiration, but there's definitely like little trickles of everything. I'm not capable of doing. I'm not capable of doing something I think that is a straight one to one anything. Like my brain is just like stew pot of everything at all times, and I don't know what I'm gonna ladle out. But sometimes, yeah, and I think that's why if like people have noted that it has so many different genres going on, is because that's just how my brain works. I don't think I know how to parse it out into separate things. It's just all one big soup. I think LP
Yeah, that'll
dropped
be
a
a
question in the
question.
chat. Yeah, I'll read this question. Um, so what's the next dragon you're trying to ride? What are your new story obsessions? Ooh, okay. So I am working on an epic fantasy novel right now. Um it's basically, how can I describe it? It's a merge of black gay ballroom culture, the Krakoan era X-Men, and Daenerys Targaryen. It's like all three of those things are thrown into a pot. So basically, it's about this island of black magical gay people, and they have existed kind of like as this preeminent like nation for like 3 centuries, but they're hated by the larger continent. They're still ostracized. They're still hated. But what happens is that there's this tense, like almost peace between them. They tolerate them because it's if we have something to hate, then we don't have to worry about our problems. But there's this woman. She's a witch basically, and she's a very powerful witch, and she is of she's also she's queer, and so she's basically like, you people on this island, y'all abandon the rest of us. Well, I'm coming to burn it all down, and you're either going to be with me or you're going to be against me. And so so that's kind of the thing that I'm working on right now. So yeah, I'm on the second draft of it. Hopefully it'll be in my agent's inbox by the end of the next couple of months. But yeah, that's my
That
big
sounds
thing.
exciting.
Yeah.
I feel like that recent X-Men era had a really big hit with the gays.
It hit because it felt
I've
like
seen so many people. I was like, I didn't see people talk about X-Men like this since the '90s.
I haven't. I hadn't like it honestly. When I started getting into that, I was like, I have not felt like inspired by X-Men in years. Like this actually resonates with me, and it just grew into this seed. And then of course, I was kind of always adjacent to Black Gay Ballroom just because my ex, who I was with for a few years, he was part of it. So I kind of always they always would try to get me into it, and I was just too shy. And I was like, no, 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 I'm not confident enough to walk down stages. But he would, and so I got to make friends with a lot of people. I got to meet a lot of these people. I don't know if y'all know the show Legendary that was on HBO. So it was actually interesting. Like I was seeing people, I was like, oh, I know them. Like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I remember them from way back. It was cool to see, that get elevated to that kind of level.
Continue on, yeah.
But I also was like, this is like tailor made for fantasy. Like you got people dressing for categories, they're looking beautiful, they're doing these elaborate dance moves. There's this call and response. You're part of different houses. Like that's that's tailor made for epic fantasy in a lot of ways. So I'm extrapolating that somewhat and combining it with the X-Men, which is obviously queer in so many ways, and trying to make it black and try to make it epic, and we'll see what happens. So
That's what's up. That's I'm so interested because I know it's Hickman that did that, right?
yeah, yeah, Hickman, yeah, yeah,
And then so it's so interesting that they took him off that project to start a new project. And so that changed it now as we into the fall. And I was like, I've never seen so many people talk about Era. It seemed like the most weirdest like move for
it
them to
was.
do.
I think it was getting it because see, Hickman was pushing the boundaries and he was ready to do some things, and I think they probably, I mean, them white men in editorial,
Yeah.
they probably were like, hold on, you're talking about a throuple? Like, no,
Like
no,
he
no, 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 we're
started
not
off
doing
with
that.
that.
Like, this is
Yeah,
too
he
much.
started off with them in a little cube together.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah,
they've
yeah.
been waiting on Cyclops and Jade and
Yeah.
Wolverine
So
to
they were
go ahead
probably
and do
like,
it.
you making us mad, uncomfortable, man. We gotta end this. So and
Yeah. I mean, I'm
I
excited
do
for his
think,
new project because it was a good shakeup. I felt like
yeah,
in a interesting era of comics, maybe like that was like I said, I've seen a lot of people talking about that, and I haven't
yeah,
really seen a lot of people like really going like super in on comics, and I felt like um that whole X-Men, I guess even still now, not as much now, but like when it
yeah,
first started, it like I mean I even read the first like couple 2 hours or whatever.
yeah,
But it was like, oh, everyone, it was like a new boost. And that was just very interesting how he kind of came in and gave it that revitalization.
yeah.
Um, where it was like, I don't know if I say comics were stale, but I guess it was like Invincible was
You can say it.
popular.
I think you
Everything
can
else was
say
popular
it.
during
I
that
think
time. It
you
was a
can say
weird
it.
time, I felt like, because that DC rebooted again.
Yeah, no, it
It-
was definitely not. It was definitely not feeling exciting, right? I
yeah.
think it wasn't exciting. You can say that. I think. Yeah, and I think, and so honestly, I think for me, what I think really, really got that conversation going about the Krakoan era X-Men was when they started doing the Hellfire Gala. And for me, that felt
Yeah.
like a direct pull
During
out
the
of
Met
Black
Gala, yeah,
Gay.
same
I feel
time
like
Met
that,
Gala, yeah.
yeah, and see, even the Met Gala, I think is a direct pull from Black gay ballroom culture. Like Black gay people were doing this kind of spectacle way before either of these concepts. Like we've been in here doing this thing, and I think that was kind of like the idea that sparked some of this new novel too. Is like I was like, you know what, we got to get. I'm if no one else is gonna give us our credit, I'm gonna give us our credit, dang it, because all of this spectacle and fashion and high fashion and
How much is
avant-garde stuff, like
wrong?
that's
Yeah.
us. That's us. And we don't get, we don't get the credit. So yeah. So I think that
Well,
for me.
this is exciting.
Yeah.
I'll
So
be on the lookout.
second
But
draft, so
what show
I'm
up at or your other one, your emotional, sexual, coming of age story. Either or. Either or. Okay,
yeah, I
Brent,
got
this is my last question for you,
all
and then we
right, all
can
right.
wrap it up. So I asked each like person, which was only you that, which was the last person, but the idea was to ask each person, what would you say to yourself in the future when we bring you back for your next book release?
Ooh, for your
So we're
next
gonna
one.
play this when we bring you back.
Um, what I would say to myself is like, because I know I'm not going to sway from this path, so I'm going to say thank you for being true to writing unapologetically Black stories and writing stories that are true to yourself, because you need them and other people need them too. And that's what I would say to myself in the future.
There it is. I can't wait until we bring it back up and see. Like I always feel like people do like, oh, what do you tell somebody when they was like your past self or like your
Yeah.
kid self? So I'm always like, okay, you know what? Let's make this a open-ended thing. Like this isn't the last time you're gonna be here. You're gonna have more books and we're gonna be chatting it up some more. So
From
that's why I'm trying
your
to push
lips
it forward like
look
that.
from your lips to God's ears, because yeah, no, I'm working on it. I'm working on stuff. So
Name of the game. Alrighty, folks. I want to thank you all for coming to our second author interview. Hopefully, we have a little bit more this year. We were supposed to do some last year, but life gets lifey. And hopefully, you just bring in some more people that you're interested in, like listening and talking to them about writing, spec fic, their work, magazines, publishing, and all the sorts. Brent, I want to thank you for even taking the time to
thank
do
you.
this. I know you obviously you're one of our own, but still, I just like wanted to just say thank you. You're the first person I reached out to do it initially. So you said yes, and that kind of gave me the confidence to reach out to other people as well. Even though I
Yeah,
was like, I don't really know these people, but I was like, we're Black, so I'm just gonna do. I mean, I've met some people, but it's like you don't even, I don't know. It's just I feel like it's a little different on Twitter sometimes, especially
yeah,
now,
no, for
like, how
sure.
things change so quickly and drastically. It's less like let's just be in our little bubble space and happy. It's more like I don't know. Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Well,
So
I thank you. Thank
yeah,
you for having me. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
alrighty. I thank you all for coming, and I will see y'all in April. So look out for that announcement coming soon. All right, folks. Thanks so much.